It's time for Veterans Issues, the show that brings you information about veterans, military, and their family. Now here's your host, Ken Rollins.
Welcome to Veterans Issues. Ken Rollins here, and today I got a guest coming back from being on here before. He's a very dear friend, very interesting. He's a World War II veteran. He's a movie star, and he's the star of the documentary My Anniston. We're going to talk with Edward Wood when we come back. Get you a pen. Be right back. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. Ken Rollins. Today's guest is a very dear friend of mine. He's a World War II veteran. I worked with him for many years, and he done went on and become a movie star and just run off and left us. But welcome back to the show, Edward Wood. Welcome back, buddy.
Thank you.
I'm glad you still remember the little people. Now, what I want to do is tell people about to clarify that you know, I teased you about being a movie star, but you did a documentary called My Anniston. It's basically about your background, and it's also about the Freedom Rider bus burning happened here in Anniston. So that movie, I don't know what year you remember you did that in.
No, I don't. It's been several years ago.
It's been several years, but it covered a lot, starting at your home to through that bad time, and then of course you've been through some bad times. So for the people out there that's watching that don't know anything about Edward Wood, you were born in Clay County?
Yes, I was born on a cotton farm in Clay County, Alabama, at a little place called Delta.
Know all about it.
It's a few miles south of here. I grew up in that area and farmed up until World War II came along, and so I went in the military along with three brothers of mine.
Volunteered or drafted?
No, drafted.
Got that letter.
Right, and when I got discharged, I didn't want to go back to farming, so I loafed for a year or two and then wound up in Anniston and been here ever since.
Well, you skipped over a lot of that. There's three of you, said three of you went in the military together. At one time, there was three Wood brothers over in the Pacific at the same time.
There were four of us brothers in the military, and three of us was in the Pacific at the same time. In fact, two of them was on Guam, and I went as close to Guam as from here to 10th and Noble, and I knew I had two brothers out there, but I was stationed on an aircraft carrier and couldn't get off the ship.
Wow. Well, you know, you and I talked earlier off the air, and you and I have been through some times together on this earth. But where we are right now with the divide of the country, and these millennials that are in their 30s that were born in the 1990, they think that they've been through something, but I want you to tell me what happened when you got out of the Navy in World War II and got on a bus.
Well, let me back up a little bit. I thought when I went in the military, there were a lot of segregation in those days. Where you looked, it was colored restroom, colored drinking fountain, colored this, and it was just really segregated everything. Well, I was naive enough to think that once I went in the military and we won the war, things was going to be different back here. But I came home with a naval uniform on after having fought in the war and standing up on a bus looking at vacant seats and couldn't sit down. And I didn't quite understand that. So when I got home, I was really amazed. I went to town. Everybody in the country in those days went to town on Saturday afternoon, went to the movie or whatever. And I met a farmer that I knew most of my life. And he asked me where I got that uniform on. Where'd you get that uniform, boy? You steal it? I said, no, I didn't steal it. Uncle Sam put it on me. He said, you better pull it off. Some of these white folks gonna pull it off of you. I said, well, you're white.
You start pulling, big boy. See, I'm glad you told that, because these young folks that's out there talking about how they've been put through this and they've been racism and stuff. They don't know. They don't know what real segregation is and racism. they don't really have any idea compared to what you've lived, what you've seen and witnessed, you and your family. And it was something about a store, guy owned a store. I don't know, something about your mama or whatever, but I don't remember all the stories. The one thing that you told me 40 years ago that stuck with me to this day, and I won't say the drugstore name, but downtown Anderson, you went in to get some medicine for your wife, Mary.
Right.
And within reaching distance of that pharmacy was a malts. You get a chocolate shake, or you can get a hamburger, whatever. And your son Pee Wee wanted a hamburger. I don't think to today you've been able to explain to him why you wasn't allowed to buy him a hamburger, but you get the medicine from the same guy that owned the store.
No, I never told him. Just couldn't bring myself to tell him, to give him the idea that he was a little less human than anybody else. I wasn't going to do that, and I still don't do that. But I went to get a prescription filled, and the pharmacist was in the back of the store. It had a lunch counter about middle ways. So my son was about 4 years old, and he saw people eating, and he wanted a hamburger. And of course, at that time, they didn't serve black people, and I knew that, but he didn't. So he started snatching on my hands, "Daddy, Daddy, I want a hamburger." And I kept trying to shoo him off to take him on. He just holding back, and finally just started crying. So I reached down and grabbed him, picked him up, and carried him out of the store. And by that time, I was crying also. And as I went out the door, somebody hollered and said, "Did you want something, boy?" And I said, "No." And I made up my mind that day, if I can do anything about this, I don't want my son to experience what I have experienced. So I got registered to vote. I became active in the civil rights movement. I sat in, laid in, prayed in, and cried in.
Wow, that I know your backstory, and you really did that. But I don't ever remember you taking up bricks and sticks and guns and knives to get your point across.
No.
Dr. King did it a whole different way.
Right.
It was nonviolent. Even if the other one acted up, y'all acted down. It was like you're not going to stoop that low
No.
to get there. And I've always respected that. That's a story that these kids out there, they don't have any idea. My point I was wanting you to tell that is these 30 years old out there that's yelling about this mistreatment and all that kind of thing, compared to what you've been through and your family's been through, they've been treated nice. I mean, you said to me earlier today that America's great. It don't need to be fixed. That it's a great country.
Well, I listened to our president, and this is one of his things.
Make
that
America
he's going to
great.
make America great again. I'm not quite sure I understand what he's saying. As far as I'm concerned, America is greater right now than it's ever been. I don't have to go around to the back door. I can go and sit down and eat. I can drink out of any drinking fountain that I want to. I don't have to look at my name on everything of every bathroom, every drinking fountain, every door, colored white, completely and totally and always reminded that I'm black.
And we can always go to a commercial anytime we want to. So let's go. Let's take a break. We'll come right back. We're going to talk more with Everett Wood. Stay where you are and get up in. Welcome back to Veterans Issue. We're talking about Everett Wood. We were talking about some of the things in the past that in comparison to the way things are today. And I can tell you right now, we are divided. And you said the president talked about making America great again. And from your perspective, it's always been great, but it's greater now than it has been in a long time. So you're seeing it from a different thing than a lot of people. If they want to know when America wasn't so great, let's go back to 1962 and 63. And that's when we can show them when America wasn't so great, if you know what I'm talking. You and I had some experiences with the George Wallace too.
Yes.
Business experiences.
As a matter of fact, I sat at the table on 2 different occasions and talked to Governor Wallace just like I'm talking to you. And I was absolutely amazed at the things that he said. He was standing in the schoolhouse door, he was raising sand and spitting fire. And he was very, very calm on those 2 occasions. And he said, and so many other things he said, but I remembered very distinctly, he said, don't listen to what I gotta say or what I'm saying. He said, you all go ahead and get me elected. I'm a politician, and I'm saying what the majority of the voters want to hear me say. He said, but you get your people registered to vote and help me put me in office, and I'm gonna do something for them, and I'm gonna do something for y'all. I was really amazed to hear him say that after having seen him on television and the things that he was saying and the things he was doing. He was a whole different person talking to him in person than he was when you see him on television.
He absolutely was, and I had the pleasure of sitting with him, and I won't go into all the things he said because it's not really for the sensitive ears out here, but I can tell you, the folks that's watching, that the racism, the words that were spoken by this Governor Wallace, as we were talking about, were nothing compared to what came out of Washington, D.C. from our President Johnson and the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy. This came out of George Wallace's mouth. Man, I won't repeat them here because it is kind of rough, but there was the time that we lived in back then. You were sharecroppers, and I think you remember, how did you say that? We did a lot of cropping?
I did a lot of cropping, but I did very little sharing.
Yeah.
What that means is that the landlord owned the land, he furnished the stock, you did the work, and the half of whatever you produced belonged to the landlord. Then you paid your bill out of your half, and by the time all of that happened, there was nothing left for you. So
including the place
I
you
did
lived.
the cropping, but there was no sharing.
Yeah, you lived in his house too, didn't you?
Yes, he furnished the house, the land, everything. And when you got ready to go, all you did was call your dog and move out.
I like that.
You didn't have anything else.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But those that never picked cotton, I mean, I picked probably more cotton than the average person. I don't mean in the pounds. I mean the days I picked, I could not pick cotton like my mama. My mama could take off and have 75, 80 pounds. I'm sitting there trying to get a pound, and I figured out ways to pour the water jug in there to get it wet. It weighed more, things like that, but I could not keep up with that woman. But if I got a pair of shoes, that's the way I had to get them. I'm sure it's the same for you. If you got anything, you had to work for it.
Absolutely. The problem was you didn't have an older brother. My dad died when I was 12 years old, and there was 9 of us boys at home at the same time, and the 20-year-old was the oldest one. He stepped up to the plate, and he was the one that put the strap on the rest of us when we needed it. Yet he set the example. He didn't just put the strap on us, but he set the example for us. He said, I want you boys all home in bed by 10 o'clock on Saturday night. He wasn't in the street somewhere. He was there to see that we were there at 10 o'clock.
Was that Monroe?
That was Brother Monroe.
And he's 97 right
He's
now?
97 years old.
You told me he was, what was he doing in the garden last week you saw?
I went to see him 2 weeks ago, and he owns a farm still in Clay County, and he was hoeing in his garden, 97 years old.
Monroe, way to go. I know Monroe. There was something about, I would have liked to have met the other Woods above y'all, because you got some good raising along there somewhere. You worked at M&H Valve at one point, and you was a union steward out there.
That's correct.
And my brother was working out there. So when I went to work at the depot, he told me, says, look for a fellow named Edward Wood. He works out there. As it turned out, you and I worked in the same building. I became a supervisor, and your desk was right next to each other. And he would tell me about what you did at the M&H Valve. He says, he was always fair. And I always thought about that the one thing about Edward Wood, he was fair. It didn't matter who you were or whatever, he would treat you fair. And I thought, well, a legacy that a person would leave on this earth would, no, he gave me a lot of money or he did this, that, but if he was a fair man, that's a pretty good legacy, wouldn't you think?
I tried to be.
Yeah.
My mother always taught me to treat other people like I wanted to be treated. And as I grew older, I began to really believe that that's what should happen. And I believe that even today, and I'm 90 years old. I believe I ought to treat you like I want you to treat me. And I try my best to do that.
You know, you and I know that there's bad firemen, there's bad policemen in any profession, bad military people, we've seen them. There's no way you can put a group of people together and not have one bad apple in there. But we don't call the whole group bad because we got the one apple. And your perspective on the people that are down on our police nowadays, our law enforcement people we call when we're in trouble. What are your feelings on that? People just turned against them.
Most police officers has treated me with respect. I have never had a police officer to hit me. I've never had one to threaten me. I've been arrested. In fact, I've been in jail twice in my life. But each time, one time I was driving a new car that did not belong to me. It belonged to my brother. And the police stopped me, and I haven't figured until today why. But I guess it was because I was driving a new car, and he probably thought I'd stole it, or I don't know what he thought. But
Maybe
anyway,
he was driving black.
He was driving an old model, and he carried me back and put me in jail, and I stayed the night in jail. And the next morning, a friend of mine came by, and he went and talked to the man who was over the jail, and he didn't even know I was in there. So I told him, I said, well, I want to get out of here. He said, well, y'all go over to the jury's house, talk to the juries. We did, and the juries asked me what was I in there for, and I told him I have no idea. So he called the police officer, and I don't know what was said, but he came back and said, go home. And
Well, I know the sheriff, the previous sheriff, the one we got now in Calhoun County, for some reason thought the world of you or thinks the world of you and stuff like that. You have been a leader in the community and the church and all these other things, but you've always stood up for your people, stood up for yourself. Working with you with all these years, and I'll tell you what, I feel like I'm in royalty when I'm around you. You're a good man, and I like associating myself with people like that, and I appreciate you being my friend.
I love you too, Ken.
All right, brother. And it's I don't care if people out there, but we don't hang up a phone without telling each other we love each other, and that's okay, folks. You might want to find somebody in your life that you love and tell them so. And we got to go. We'll be right back with news that you can use. Get your pen. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. I appreciate Edward Wood coming in and doing the show today. True friend, he is a legend, a very good, he's a good patriot and a good model for those of us that come behind him to learn a few things. He and I were talking earlier that we may not be the smartest in the world, but if we've touched a hot stove before, we can tell you that it'll burn you. That means you don't have to touch it. So we've been a few places, done a few things. If you listen to him, he's weathered some pretty tough stuff, and he's still standing upright. And for that, I think that's a good example for those younger folks out there. Here's a number I want you to get that pen for. I want you to write this down, 855-948-2311. 855-948-2311. That's the VA hotline in Washington, D.C. It's at the White House, and you can get any kind of veterans information you want off of that. And it's also for suicide prevention. So keep that number handy, written somewhere. Maybe not for you, maybe not for somebody close to you, but if you ever know of a veteran in need of something, or a spouse, a widow of a veteran, keep that number handy. Here's a website I want you to write down, Wounded Warrior Alabama @gmail.com. Wounded Warrior Alabama @gmail.com. And the phone number is 256-458-2715. That's the Wounded Warrior place. Now, this is not for people that are wounded veterans. This is not for people who are in the military and got wounded. this is the name of the project, and Ross Winter and Mr. Williams run that program, and anything you donate to it, 100% of it goes to helping veterans. Now, they've helped veterans with ramps for the wheelchairs. They've helped veterans get their power turned on and things like that. They're not just for the wounded veterans. They are helping all veterans. So I am so glad that we've got an agency like that assists in time of need, because if I got a veteran out there in need, you rest assured they'll get a call from me. We're meeting next week to put the final touches on building the Firefighters Memorial for the state of Alabama, and it's going to be there in Centennial Memorial Park. It's going to have all of those that died in the line of duty, all those volunteer firemen, as well as the regular fire. And we got the list, and we're going to meet on the 13th of September to solidify that and take the steps to go forward to build that memorial. So we'll have the official law enforcement memorial, the official Vietnam memorial, and then we'll have the official firefighter memorial, all there in Centennial Memorial Park. I've always talked about wheelchairs that needed, but I'm going to tell you right now, I back off on that for a little while. I've got all the wheelchairs I need at this point. Matter of fact, I'm going to have to find a place to put one of them. But veterans, if there's a veteran out there that needs a wheelchair, give me a call. Some information's on the screen here periodically. Just give me a call, and I'll get you a wheelchair out. Now, I don't have a lift for you to haul it on, but I got a lift that I can bring it out there to you. So let me know if you need a chair. If you, let's see, law enforcement tag, yeah. When you go to get your tag renewal, think about the law enforcement tag. You do not have to be in law enforcement to have that tag. You purchase that tag, it goes with all colors of your car. It's got the shield on it with a rose, which is symbolic of a fallen law enforcement person. The revenue from that sale of that tag goes to building these memorials up in the park there and taking care of the law enforcement memorial that's up there. Because when we have to add a name, it's pretty expensive to have a sandblaster come in and do that. So anyhow, and we still need drivers for the DAV van. If you're interested, give me a call. This week's salute goes out to my hero and my friend, Edward Wood. We'll see you next week here on Veterans Issue. So,